Hi there. Do you ever have those days when your lower back just feels sticky and you just want to be able to free it up without having to go for a manual treatment? So that's what we're going to be working on today. I just want to show you on this first, a little arts and crafts project to try to show you all of the different axes we have on the sacrum. So this is looking at the spine from behind. The triangular bone at the base of the spine is our sacrum. And it's actually 5 vertebrae that are fused together. So we have several different axes around which that bone can move. And it has quite a few different movements. And in order to free up the lower back, we have to address all of those movements. So hopefully you can see all the different colors here. I'm gonna try to get closer to you so you can see my little arts and crafts project. So we have 3 horizontal axes. We have one at S2, one at S3, and one at S4, meaning the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of those fused vertebrae. So the sacrum will do a flexion extension or a tuck under and a back bend around those 3 axes. It then has a vertical axis straight down the middle, and I didn't include them because they were just all falling off when I added too many. But there's also 2 other vertical axes, one on the right and one on the left. And then we get a combined motion of the axis around this oblique axis. So these blue crisscross lines that go from the hemibase on one side to the ILA on the other. And the sacrum does a diagonal rotation around those axes. So we're going to use a face cloth. So I will invite you to get a face cloth, just a regular face cloth. I've chosen a more thicker one than as opposed to a thin one, just because when we put our weight on it, it might squish. So if you only have thin, that's fine. Grab a pair of scissors and some sort of tape, electrical tape works best. So we're basically trying to create this little cylinder like I've already done on this one. So you're gonna take your face cloth, you'll fold it in half, and then you're just gonna roll it. Try to do it nice and tightly so that when you put your weight on it, it doesn't come apart. And we're using this so that when we do the movements, we're going to be creating those virtual axes for ourselves. This rolled up face cloth will become the axes that I just showed you with pipe cleaners on the spine. So you can absolutely do it without tape, but so that you don't have to be bothered with the face cloth falling apart and you having to keep putting it back together, I recommend putting 2 or 3 pieces of tape around so that you've got your cylinder and it stays that way the whole time. And you can certainly keep it like that so that you use it over and over again. Okay, so you've got your cylinder. So now keep in mind those axes that I showed you on the spine, because it's going to be difficult for you to see. That face cloth is going to be underneath me, so you're not going to be able to see it all that well when I'm doing it. We're going to do the whole thing on our backs. So just get into a comfortable position on your back. For the very first one, you're going to place it crosswise underneath your sacrum. Now it doesn't matter if you don't know exactly where S2, S3, S4 are. Imagine that triangular bone divided into 5, and for your first one, put it dead center, okay? Take a moment to just let your body accept that position. And then you're going to do a little bit of rocking like a teeter-totter, like a seesaw, and you're rocking around that axis that you've created with your rolled up face cloth. So you can go fast or slow. For some reason in my body today, it feels good to go a little bit faster, but there are other days when I do it exquisitely slowly. And that's something that you just want to start to get used to, is learning how to pay attention to what feels good in your body, regardless of what some teacher or some therapist is telling you you should do. Always taking that information, but then compare it with what feels good in your body today and adapt as you need to. So we're going back and forth, and notice how much freedom you do or don't have around this axis. And then just let it go. Now you're going to move, and I tend to, because it gets squished a little bit each time, I tend to roll it
like a quarter so that I'm going more on the puffier side of it each time. So we're going one vertebrae below what we just did. So again, if you picture that triangular bone, it's not that big. It's maybe the size of your palm. We're dividing it into 5. We started in the very middle, and now you're going maybe half an inch, quarter of an inch to half an inch lower than that. So first just allow your body to accept it, and then you slowly start to create that rocking again. So you're essentially doing the same action of your sacrum, but because the axis is lower down, it's going to be easier to curl round. It'll be a little bit tougher to go into that extended position. So just notice how that feels in your body, how it feels different than what you had done before, and just compare. And again, the speed that you choose to go, it's really dependent on what feels good in your body today. Pause. Now imagine that center point again. I'm going to again rotate my thing just by a little bit so I'm on the puffier side. And now I'm putting it a quarter to half an inch above that center point. We're still going in that horizontal axis. And we start by just allowing the body to accept that something is there, something foreign is underneath our sacrum. And then you slowly start to rock around this axis. So now we should be around S2 for those of you who are interested in the anatomy. We started at S3, we went down to S4, now we've gone up to S2. So when you're at S2, you'll find a little bit more freedom into the extended position than there is in the flexed position, just because of physics, because you've changed that fulcrum around which you're moving. And don't worry about matching my speed or how big or small my movements are. You go with what feels good in your body. And let it release. Take it out for a moment. At any point, if you feel you need to windshield wiper the legs, hug the knees into the chest, do whatever you need to do. So now we're going to place it lengthwise. We're going to start on the right side. So now if you picture that sacrum, I don't have it with me, so imagine that sacrum is that triangular bone roughly the size of your palm. We're now going to put it on the right hand side. So it's going up and down in the same direction that the spine goes, and you're putting it to the right side. So you'll notice, so if you know your anatomy, the PSIS is going to be right there. You're going to be just inside of the PSIS. For those of you who don't know your anatomy, you're going to come up against a bony bump. You want to be just to the inside of it. So it's not far from center. So your pelvis is going to feel a little off kilter. That's normal. That's what we want. So allow the weight to come down into the left cheek. And then you're going to be pushing into your left foot to pivot up and around that rolled cylinder and come back. So you're tilting or rotating the sacrum around that vertical axis that we created on the right side. And for these ones, I like to lengthen the leg of the side that we've got the cylinder on. And just notice how that gives you a little bit more freedom of movement. Take it nice and slow. Or as I said, for me on this one today, slower feels better, whereas the other ones, it felt better to do it quicker today. Go with what feels good in your body. And just notice, how does that feel? Does it feel sticky? Does it feel free? Was it sticky at first, and as you move, it's starting to free up? Of course, that's our goal. And release, bend that leg. Take your cylinder. I always like to just puff it up again in the center. And now we're going just left of center. So you want to be just to the inside of the PSIS, or just to the inside of, there's a bony bump that you'll come up against. Just be to the inside of it. If you don't feel where that bump is, don't worry about it. If you're actually on the bump, it's a very nice exercise with a different effect, so you won't be doing anything incorrect. So you're going to feel a little off kilter. The left cheek will be higher than the right. That's what we want. You're going to press into the right foot to rotate your sacrum around that cylinder, and you come back down. So do that a few times at your rhythm. If you imagined your pelvis was a bowl filled with water, you're trying to spill the water over to your left, and then you're trying to bring it back into your bowl. So we'll do it a couple of times with both legs bent. And then if it feels okay in your body, I find it nice to lengthen the leg of the side you've got the cylinder on, that virtual axis, and you go ahead and rotate around that. And as you're doing all these different axes of the sacrum, just notice which ones are free, which ones are sticky, which ones free up as you do the movement. If you had any discomfort or pain in your back at the beginning, notice if any of them all of a sudden take that sensation away and you feel better. And release. So puff up your cylinder again, and then our last vertical axis is going to go right through the center. So it follows exactly the same line as your spine. So now if my hands are my pelvis, I'm going to let one cheek drop down to rotate the sacrum towards the right. I bring that cheek back up, they're both even, and then I drop down on the left and back to center. So alternating fast or slow depending on what you like. So it would be like you're doing a seesaw this way. And we're essentially creating a rotation of the sacrum around that vertical axis, which is what we were just doing previously. Previously we were doing it around the right and left vertical axes. Now we're doing it around that center axis. One last time each side. Take your cylinder out, puff it up again. Now this one is my favorite. We're going to do the oblique axes, the ones that crisscross on a diagonal, and these combine that round and extend version, or flexion and extension, and the rotation. It's a combination of those two. So you're going to create this position of your, so do the same as myself. You're higher on the left side, lower on the right. When you come down onto it, of course it's going to feel a little strange because you've got something foreign under your sacrum, but try to feel like you are getting that diagonal line going right through the center point. You're going right through S2 right in the middle. And then what we're going to be doing, so imagine now that you had a marble right in the center of the pelvis. Imagine you're trying to roll the marble towards the top right bony projection of the pelvis, the ASIS, for those of you that know your anatomy. And then you're trying to roll the marble towards the crease of your left hip. So we're still doing a teeter-totter motion, but around this oblique or this diagonal axis. So if you've never done this before, it can feel a little bit foreign in your body. But this is a motion that our sacrum does every time we take a step in walking. So it's really beneficial to free up the movement around this axis. So you're going towards the crease of your left hip, or you're setting that left sit bone into the floor, and then you're diagonally reaching that left sit bone towards the right waist, the bottom of the right waist. A couple more times going back and forth on that diagonal. You make it as big or as small as feels good in your body. And for today, let your knees follow however they want and release in the center. Take it out for a second. Again, if you need to do any windshield wiping of the leg, you need to get off your back for a moment, do that. So now we're doing the opposite diagonal, where the higher end is going to be towards the right, lower end towards the left. You're crisscrossing the sacrum. So right away, I feel that I've placed it wrong. It just doesn't feel like it's going through that correct diagonal. And once you've done it a few times, you'll start to get that awareness of when it feels like it's on the right place. So now I feel like I've got it in that correct place. So it's crossing the sacrum like this. So we're going to dip the right sit bone into the floor on the diagonal. And then it's like you're reaching your right sit bone towards the lower part of your left waist. So I extend through my lower back and pelvis as I reach that right sit bone into the ground. And then I round through the lower back and pelvis as I reach the sit bone towards the opposite waist. So again, you're teeter-tottering, but now we're on a diagonal. And the beauty of going around these oblique axes is that we're combining the flexion extension of the sacrum and the rotation of the sacrum. So this movement around the oblique axis is a little bit of both. It's doing a little bit of rotation and flexion as we come this way. It's doing a little bit of rotation and extension as we go this way. Essential movements for us to have a free pelvis, sacroiliac joints when we're walking. Last one. And release. You can take your cylinder out, just take a moment, eyes closed, just do a little body scan, see how your sacrum feels now. When you're ready, take your time to turn onto your side and come up to seated. I would actually recommend, I just won't do it myself because I will be out of the frame. I didn't set up the camera properly, but I recommend standing and walking around, do a little bit of cha-cha-cha kind of action to sort of test out how your sacrum and lower back feel. We should have done that at the beginning as well, and it's nice to compare, but hopefully you feel a nice freedom now that perhaps you didn't feel at the beginning. And if you found one particular axis that was stickier than the others, then spend more time on that one. I would love to hear your feedback on this one. Let me know if it helped to give you a little more freedom in your lower back and pelvis.